So I am in Gen Z, and Gen Z is the generation of all generations at this point that has most grown up with this technology. Now, smartphones didn't come along until, years after I had been born, but still, what I want to know is from your perspective, you came up in a time where not even mobile phones were yet a thing, let alone smartphones. What have you seen as society has adopted this technology, having borne witness to really the entire process up to this point?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, that's you could go a lot of different ways with that. Let me just say the overarching thing that I have seen is anxiety. Because if I text you and you don't respond within the next 3 seconds, I think you're dead. Surely you've had a car wreck. You've been murdered. Something bad has happened. I'm saying that in a joking way, but quite honestly, many people have risen to that level of anxiety when they don't have that immediately. I need to be able to reach out and touch you, right? So let me just take you back in time. When John and I got married, we just celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary. When we got married, neither one of us had a cell phone, much less a smartphone. And so when we were dating, we got in a car and we drove off, and our parents didn't hear from us again unless we broke down and had to walk to some house along the side of the road to get a landline and call someone, or someone came by on the road that could go to a pay phone. There were these things you could put coins in and make calls. And so and our parents, I was supposed to be home at 11 o'clock or midnight or whatever my curfew was for the night. Okay, if I wasn't home by then or an hour after then, because I obeyed my curfews, they would start maybe to get worried. Up until then, there was no big anxiety. I was just out doing what I would do. When Jonna went to the grocery store, I wasn't worried about communicating with her. It wasn't even an idea. I wasn't worried that she was broken down by the road. Yeah, I mean, if it was 2 hours after I thought she should be home, I might start to get concerned. But there was not this constant anxiety. The other thing that I've seen relative to that is the amount of information that has flooded us, especially in the most recent years, creates a couple of things. I'll use my kids, as an example. When you were trying to decide what career path you wanted to take, you literally had the whole world in front of you. You knew about career paths that when I was your age, I didn't even know existed, right? I lived in a much smaller world. If I wanted to know what degree programs a school offered, I wrote them a letter or called them on the phone, and they sent me a catalog in the mail. And I looked through there. And so, I did not have this great anxiety over what do I want to be. It was just a much simpler form of life. Now you've all got kids. Well, there's like a bazillion ways to raise kids. And everybody on the internet is an expert. And everybody is telling you this is the right way to do it. That didn't exist when y'all were kids. And so where we got our advice from is, we read some books, a few select books. We talked to our parents, our grandparents. They said, do this, because that's what had worked to raise us. And we assumed if it was good enough for us, it'd be good enough for y'all. And that's what we did. It's not that we didn't maybe do some things differently, but we did not have 1,000 different voices telling us, do it this way.
Yep.
And the anxiety that creates is, am I making the right decision here? Mm-hmm. Am I doing this the right way? Am I harming my child because, they had, solid food one day before some expert told me I was supposed to give it to them? It's that kind of thing. And so all those things lumped together has created a society of over-anxious people.
Mm-hmm.
It has created depression.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other factors that feed into that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's created, I'll just say, mental health issues.
Yeah.
Because we're overwhelmed with information that we do not know what to do with.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So, I mean, there's many other things I could talk about that have been impacted, but first and foremost, and I would say the biggest thing that has impacted us as a culture overall is that issue.
People say you have the world at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe not.
exactly.
Maybe too many choices is the definition of anxiety. Because think about situations in which you're anxious. It is the point at which the path forward is the most obscure, and therefore the multiplicity of potentialities is the highest, right?
Yeah.
So,
Can I give a very basic example of this? Don't mean to cut you off.
yeah.
Okay. If I go to Five Guys, I think I'll have a hamburger.
Yes.
My life is simple. There's no anxiety. Okay. If I go to the Cheesecake Factory, they've got like a book for a menu.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can have Asian food. I can have American food. I can have whatever. I mean, they got everything on the menu. Do you know how much anxiety that creates on trying?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to order the best possible thing for my situation right now? I mean, that's just a very basic example, but I think people can relate to it.
Yeah.
Too many choices makes life difficult. Hey, you want a hamburger? You want that with fries or without fries? I mean, that's kind of the choices,
Right.
And that's calming for us. It's like, okay, that's easy, and that's what cell phones have done to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They have put the world at our fingertips.
Yes, the world, the entire world. I mean,
literally.
I mean, obviously, when you're interfacing with the world through your phone, you're interfacing with a relatively small subset of the world. But this is the world we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of options that the phone gives you is absolutely overwhelming, more than we were ever really intended, I think, to have to encounter. To your point, I'm working on a cafe concept right now, and I have disciplined myself to shrink down the menu as much as possible so as to not induce anxiety in the customer.
Mm-hmm.
I went in a cafe not that long ago, and I'm sure that they were very proud of themselves for their selection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The menu was enormous. Okay, there are two things wrong with that. One, it's anxiety. Two, I now have no assurity that they have any idea how to make any of those, because I know that it's just too much for any one person to have any level of competence in making every single one of those, in this case, drinks, because it was a cafe. But see, now...
Yeah, the other thing is, too, it induces a lot of frustration in me because I'm standing behind a lady who will not make her mind up and order and keep moving. It frustrates the people behind too. Speed up, make a decision, let's go.
Right.
Why are we stressing over latte or cappuccino? I mean, come on.
Because we want to make the right choice. We have what they call FOMO. Fear of missing out. And the more there is to miss out on, the more fear and less anxiety.
I'm glad you spelled out what that acronym was, because I wouldn't have known it otherwise.
Yes, and the first generational gap manifests itself. I'm sure there'll be many more. And something that you hit on there is also data input.
Mm-hmm.
I talked with Jacob, my brother, and also our editor, for those of you who don't know. I talked to him about data input last night, because it's something that he's very keen on, he's very sensitive to. When we are interacting with our phones, we are taking in incredible amounts of data. And often, because of the nature of smartphones and the sort of economic interests thereof, that data is very stimulating.
Mm-hmm.
We are being stimulated all the time and having incredible amounts of data in the form of text, that is writing, images, videos, sounds poured into us at all times. And anything that you take in like that is now going to inhabit your mind. And what you will find is you have so many voices rattling around in your head that eventually you do not even know what the sound of your own thoughts is like.
Mm-hmm.
I would encourage anyone to turn off the noise for a given period of time. I would say at least 3 days. And what you will find is that you are suddenly able to hear your own thoughts and perhaps even string a bigger number of your thoughts together without interruption. Because now when we think I heard this person say this, and okay, I need to think about that too. And then I heard this person say this, and I saw this here. And it's very fragmented. It is as fragmented as the amount of data that we take in. So that's another issue with the smartphones.
Well, and back to the anxiety piece, and I want to relate that back to Scripture. So, one of the fruits of the Spirit is peace, and peace and anxiety are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. The Bible tells us not to be anxious, but through all things with prayer and supplication, bring them to God with thanksgiving. And so, we are not to be an anxious people. We're to be a people at peace. We're to be taking our issues to God when anxiety does rise up in us through prayer. Why? So that we can return to a place of peace. And so here's our first diversion point. Okay, we talked about earlier, is technology bringing us closer to God, or is it taking us further away from God?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, if you are being anxious all the time and you are a smartphone user that's constantly texting, calling, on social media, constant communication, okay, your cell phone is now taking you further away from the place that God intends for you. It's not enabling you to be at peace. It is being a destroyer of your peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are the things that we want to point out to people. And when you're anxious, that has a ripple effect to the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
It impacts other people's peace. It impacts other people's just lives in general, because now they have to respond to your anxiety. And so whatever we do, we don't do in isolation. It trickles down to those around us. Sometimes it doesn't trickle down. Sometimes it dumps out on them, right? And so when it comes to the information overload that you're discussing and the anxiety inducement that might create in us, I just want to make that point.